A new secret dialogue option in ESO's Dark Heart of Skyrim event is hitting at next year's Chapter Zone location pretty hard, and it might just be another classic return to nostalgia for ESO.
Ah yes, the Vampire Lord in Hrota Cave. After I cleansed my blade, I returned home to the ashlands of Morrowind. My father passed away, joining our ancestors in our crypt. It was a long journey, escorting him to Necrom. Hold your sympathies. Do I seem as though I had a happy childhood? My father was a tyrant. His passing meant little to me, beyond a tiresome task and a long journey through the lands of the Telvanni.
Did you catch that? This is Mel Adris, and you can complete this brand new quest right now during the Dark Heart of Skyrim celebration event. The thing is that most players don't ever see this extended dialogue. Instead, they simply get this.
I was on a hunt when I received word that the Grey Host had overrun these lands. An army of parasites from out of the past. Even the dregs have proven to be a worthy challenge.
But if you've adventured with Mel before, specifically in the zone of Gold Coast, and completed his questline there, you can also get this secret dialogue option, which name drops two pretty important locations that just might be next year's ESO Chapter Zone.
I returned home to the ashlands of Morrowind. It was a long journey, escorting him to Necrom. His passing meant little to me, beyond a tiresome task and a long journey through the lands of the Telvanni.
Why is this significant? Well, this isn't the first time the Telvanni Peninsula has been mentioned this year as a potential location for the next chapter. For one thing, Lady Laurent also mentions this location at the end of the High Isle chapter main quest if you speak to her afterwards. There are also apparently some NPCs in the new Galen zone that mention the Telvanni Peninsula as well. Now, last year we only had one very small and hard to find clue located in a random lore book that hinted towards the new chapter zone of High Isle. So in comparison to that, several major and minor NPCs all mentioning the same region is quite a big difference. I have an idea why Zos might be trying to push this new zone and increase the hype more than last year, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, what is the Telvanni Peninsula and what is Necrom? Both locations are actually a part of Morrowind. The Telvanni Peninsula region is not currently part of the playable zones we can access in ESO, not even from the Morrowind expansion back in 2017, but this specific area is on the map right here, and the size is just about perfect for a chapter zone in my opinion. The description of this area is also pretty amazing. The region is characterized with rocky coasts and islands. The northern half is cold, while the southern half is temperate, and the area between them is hilly. Now, to me, the different types of terrain here, from the coast to the snowy mountains and the hills in between, sounds perfect for an interesting chapter zone with lots of unique biomes and varied locations that will let the art and world design teams really shine. The description actually reminds me a lot of Hrothgar as well, which is one of my favorite early zones in the game. The cities here also sound like amazing locations. Here are some descriptions from UESP. Firewatch is one of the 8 major cities on the mainland of Morrowind, found on the northern tip of the Telvanni Peninsula. The city acquires its name because of its proximity to Red Mountain from the mainland. And Necrom is also one of 8 major cities of Morrowind, also known as the City of the Dead, because its Dunmeri tradition, the various families and clans of Morrowind travel to Necrom and bring deceased family members for solemn processions that can last up to months. It's governed by a complex hierarchy of priests and attendants who operate the well-known necropolis, and underneath the city is an extensive catacomb arranged like honeycombs. This is where the deceased are brought and prepared for burial. The city has lofty walls, gleaming white towers, and the city palace has many dark, twisted hallways, with the towers from outside looking like desiccated tusks from some ancient beast. But I know what you might be thinking, why Morrowind when we've already had a Morrowind expansion previously? Well, I talked about this at the start, but I think the answer is simple. It's nostalgia. ESO is struggling a bit now, both in terms of keeping its existing player base engaged, as well as bringing in new players. The past 2-year expansions of Blackwood, and particularly this year with High Isle, seem to indicate that less popular or even less known locations from the world of Tamriel don't necessarily translate to the best zone for a chapter. especially when you look at sales and player engagement. I think the interest in both Blackwood and High Isle was relatively low compared to the year before, which was Western Skyrim. We know that Skyrim for ESO was a huge return to nostalgia in terms of its location, and it also did really well for them in boosting game sales and player populations. Even the original Morrowind expansion back in 2017 made ESO a lot more well-known as a game than it was previously, and it brought in lots of new players as well. So in terms of content, it seems like familiar regions really do best for the Elder Scrolls Online. So it doesn't really surprise me that a return to one of Tamriel's most popular regions in Morrowind could be up next to help reinvigorate the game again. For many Elder Scrolls franchise players, Morrowind is actually their favorite game, and the region's unique creatures and cultures and locations would be a huge selling point for another ESO chapter. Again, this is still speculation at this point, but it does make a lot of sense to me, especially when you consider how High Isle was received this year. I mean, if this is true, I actually think ESO might drop even more Telvanni hints before this year is done to get players excited and talking about a possible return to Morrowind. This would be actually the exact opposite approach that they took with the High Isle chapter, being extremely, secretive and then eventually revealing a completely new region that players had never heard of or had no pre-existing connection to in other games. I don't think that approach actually worked as well as ZeniMax hoped it would this year because High Isle just didn't seem as popular. I think we know that ESO players love nostalgia, we love visiting places that we're familiar with, so I wouldn't be surprised personally if they took an opposite approach to this year for 2023 and instead started hyping up a return to a beloved region of the world, someplace like Morrowind. But of course, this video would not be complete without talking a bit about potential content and features for next year. Now, I've made my thoughts pretty clear on this recently and stated that a new class would be the best possible option moving forward to engage both new and returning players. Now, I don't know how well a new class might fit into the Telvanni Peninsula region, but we should also keep in mind that really anything is possible in ESO. For example, when the Necromancer class was introduced back in 2019, I wouldn't say it necessarily fit perfectly with the Zone of Elsewhere, though they found ways to make it work within the context of that story. The same thing could be true here with a Telvanni Peninsula chapter if this turns out to be next year's zone. We also know from Elder Scrolls lore that magic plays a major role in this area of the world. The Telvanni master wizards found in this region can be extremely powerful and are famous for growing their own towers out of giant mushrooms, using a combination of potent spells and Daedric souls. And Telvanni wizards are also known for practicing levitation magic, which could be really interesting if it found its way somehow into ESO. And of course, the Telvanni are also proficient with the more traditional magic schools, things like alteration, conjuration, and illusion magic, all of which are still missing from the current list of skill lines in ESO, and perhaps could be introduced next year as more magic-based weapons. So either way, I would be down for a Telvanni chapter and all the potential new options it could bring. But what do you all think about this possible new chapter zone for the Elder Scrolls Online? Is a Telvanni Peninsula chapter something you would play, or would you prefer something else? And what new features do you think ESO could implement if this is true? Let us know what you think down in the comment section below, and as always, thanks for watching. Hey everybody, if you're struggling at all with the Elder Scrolls Online, I definitely know the feeling. I struggled with this game for months. The biggest problem I had was even though the game says that you can play any way you want, it never really teaches you how. Like I said, it took me many months of teaching myself how the game works before I could actually start to make builds that were truly effective and fun to play. Well, today I'm excited to let you know that I finally put down my system for creating builds into a simple step-by-step guide that you can now learn and use to create your own fun and powerful builds yourself. We're calling this the ESO Zero to Hero Academy, and it's being hosted through Podia, which is an amazing online learning platform. So far, our ultimate build guide has over 25 lessons and over 2 hours of content designed to take you from a beginner to a master theory crafter, not in years like it took me, but in just a few hours. So if you want to check out the guide and preview all of the included lessons, just click on the link below to learn more.